This is The Unhappy Millionaire, where entrepreneurs and other top performers discover how to go beyond the bank balance to create thriving, joyful lives. For more, visit theunhappymillionaire.com. Now, on to the show. All right, Tal, there's this ongoing debate in the culture that is best represented by Steve Jobs versus Cal Newport. And Steve Jobs famously said to follow your passion. Cal Newport said, no, don't follow your passion, build rare and valuable skills. And that's the way to pursue your career. And I side with Steve Jobs, but I would put it a little bit differently because I think that there's a risk in the way if you tell people follow your passion. And that is that I think a passion is something you have to create and develop. It's not lying around and you pick it up. But what if when you've seen people take different paths to career fulfillment, where do they go wrong?
Before I go into that, I think that you're doing a disservice to Steve Jobs by putting him on the other side, because Steve Jobs did the right thing. And by the way, he did not follow a passion, he created one. And for me, if you go deeper into this false dichotomy, you'll find that the best way to describe it is duty versus whim, which both are wrong. Follow a duty of you need to make money, you need to do something that is good for society and have skills that people are willing to pay you money for. That leads to a drudgery of a life, right? Because I'm just going after money. And you see a lot of young kids falling into that trap of, okay, just something with money. My daughter, who's now is exactly in that phase in her life, told me about a friend who decided to become a dentist, and she has no idea what a dentist does or if she likes it or not. It's just that she heard the dentists make a lot of money. And I trained my daughter well because she's like, no, this is not the right way to. On the other hand, it's somebody who runs off to say, oh, I'm going to be a writer with no writing skills whatsoever. Or I remember I was thinking about that, about the character Olive in Little Miss Sunshine, right? Where she's like, she's not beautiful. And yet, yeah, go ahead and try to win the beauty contest. So passion is not whim. Passion is something you have to nurture and build. And so below that false dichotomy of duty versus whim, if you apply reason and see what's actually going on, it's finding meaning. And that is a complicated process that I find people just don't appreciate. It's the most complicated and I think most strategic puzzle that you need to solve. It's the puzzle of how to find meaning in life.
If we think about the audience being in the position of successful, high-performing individuals who are not as happy as they want to be with their life, the real foundation, I think, of happiness, or a key component of it is, are you passionate about your work? Do you love your work? And so I thought we could explore, first of all, how do you even know? What does it mean to know that, okay, yeah, I'm in the right work? What are warning signals that you're not? And then we can talk a little bit about, okay, well, how do you get to passion if you don't already have it? And so maybe we could start with warning signals. What are some things you see when that tell you, yeah, this person is not where they should be if they really want to enjoy their work and enjoy their life?
All I have to do is go back to the part in my life where I was so quote unquote successful, making a lot of money, managing a lot of people, VP in a multi-billion dollar company. And I remember living in my skin felt like I'm pulling weight. I'm just pulling weight. There's a lot of weight on my shoulders, a lot of things I need to do. And it's waking up every day, getting out of bed and convincing yourself that this is good and this is important. And there's an aspect of escapism in the sense of every hour or day or weekend that I can find away from my job is where I want to go. So it feels like that. It feels you're pulling weight, climbing a mountain that you didn't choose to climb. So it's not your mountain. And no matter how successful you are and what people cheer on the side, go, 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 it's still not your path. That's how I felt. And to contrast that, and that's something that a lot of people find weird when I say that, because I think unfortunately, a lot of people just forgot how to envision. It feels playing. It feels like I get to do this and I wake up from bed and just thinking about all the things I'm going to do today. And so I can't wait. I can't wait. I mean, meetings in my work today that are taking 2-3 hours, exhausting. Last night, I actually fell asleep. I don't remember falling asleep. It was 1:30 a.m. I was answering emails. I woke up with the phone in my hand because there's a couple of things I had to take care of. It's the sense of I'm doing the most important thing in the world. I don't believe people pay me to do this. I can go on forever doing this. It's this sense of pure intrinsic motivation and joy. I can't even start to describe the amount of pride and joy I experience from the things I do. Those are the two ways I think about, two states, the end of where they lead.
We had an interesting conversation with an entrepreneur friend of ours the other day, and he was telling the story of he was hiring somebody for a managerial role, and this person hadn't managed this activity. They had just been like a designer or something. And what he realized was, as he asked the person, no, what you love is design. That's what lights you up, and that's what you're thinking about. That's what you're talking about. But the kinds of activity in management, the reason he was attracted to them was not because that's what he was excited about, but because, well, I don't know exactly what it was, but it could have been it was more prestigious. It was more money. It was the next step in the journey. And so it's even when you find something that resonates, it's very easy to lose focus on that, to take it for granted and just to accept that the grass is greener in this next journey, but that it pulls me away from the place where I'm naturally drawn to, naturally at home at. And one aspect that you didn't highlight, but I find really fruitful, is the level of difficulty. When I find myself flourishing in work the most, it's not too easy and it's not too hard. It's demanding. I have to grow significantly to be able to achieve what I want to achieve, but I don't feel incapable of that. It's not utterly outside my activity. If you said, hey, I need you to run an accounting department, that would be too hard because I don't understand accounting except for the basics. But if it's I'm leading a marketing team and I need to up my level of marketing, of strategy, cool. That's an exciting thing. So it's finding the right level of demanding, I think, is an important ingredient as well.
So going back to the designer who decided to become a manager, it's because, again, we're told as kids, what you love is not the important thing, right? So you're climbing your own mountain and you're excited, but you're looking to the right and you see a mountain that makes more money and you say, that's where I should go, right? Because my culture is saying, what's the next step? What are you going to do next? Right? What I love doesn't matter. So yeah, people lose track of that. And when I interview people today, the only thing that really matters is, are they valuers and do they want something really bad? And if so, what is it? Because the fire in them that will lead them to things they gravitate automatically to will just make sure that they succeed. And that's what I'm trying to look for, the alignment between the job that I need someone to do and what they think is cool and interesting. And all I try to do in interviews is to prove to me that you're interested in this. And like you said, you're going to get to a point where you can be in the zone, which is what you described. It's like I'm thriving. The thing I love doing most is to put people in places and environments that allows them to just do things where they surprise themselves. I can't believe that I'm doing all of this just because they can't close the computer or they can't fall asleep just thinking about the next idea.
One thing that I have seen, so there is the mistake of taking on a new role because it's the next step or it's more prestigious, it has higher status, it has more money. And this goes to your point about whims. There's also pursuing a fantasy. And I don't mean a fantasy in the sense of it's something that you're utterly incapable of and could never do, but you're pursuing it not because you've really thought through what would it look like to do this role, but simply because you built up in your mind a certain image of what it would mean to do this role. So the standard example that you'll hear about, the lawyer who says, I'm getting out of the grind and I'm going to go open a coffee house or a yoga studio. And it has the same standing in their mind as a fantasy romantic partner has to somebody. It's not a real person that has good qualities and bad qualities, and you're trying to navigate the complicated relationship. It's just this image of, yeah, I'm hanging out in my bookstore sipping coffee while customers buy. You're not thinking about, well, wait, I have to manage these employees and keep the books, and my profit margins are going to be thin. How am I going to advertise? What is the way that you think about avoiding that mistake of pursuing a fantasy and something versus pursuing something that will genuinely lead you in the direction of a passion?
Again, this stems from the way religion, Buddhism, this mystic, non out of this world state of being spiritual state of being that is a fantasy and does not exist in reality. Mind-body dichotomy, as we call it in philosophy, where the mind is where I need to be in the world and what's going on around, all the complexity. We need to get away from that. It is a fantasy. It is whimsical. It is emotionalistic in nature, and it's a failure to understand what happiness really looks like. Well, first stop for a second and redevelop a vision of your destination. And if you have a vision of your destination, you'll see that destination is not an easy one. Again, I think it's the most strategic problem facing us as human beings, is to express our humanity by finding meaningful creation in this world for us. I would actually suggest stop for a second. If you're an unhappy millionaire, stop for a second and let's talk strategy for a second, and let's define what is that state that you're looking for. And you'll see that the ingredients or the building blocks that comprise that state are a little bit more complicated than just going off and writing a book without having any idea what it means or having no writing skills.
Well, why don't we go into that? So you run a program called Happiness Teams Tao, where you work with people. One of the major things that you do with them is work on how do you create passion, and specifically passion in career. So I'm curious, you sat down together and you're going to work with me. You don't have to lead me through every single step, but what's your essential approach look like that's going to help me get from I'm an unhappy millionaire to I'm trying to build a much stronger foundation for the life that I want?
So it starts with what I just said, which is let's build a vision of what happiness is. But if we skip that for a second and get tactical, right? A lot of people like, okay, so what do I do? The first thing I would do is, and I'm asking you, Don, okay, answer this question. When I was a kid, I
would get really obsessed with a certain activity. So for a while it was karate, for a while it was baseball, for a while it was writing. Those were the big three throughout my early childhood. Those were the things that I would just...
You love to dive into things, learn them, and get deep into them, right?
Yeah, and just try to be the best. I utterly failed at karate and baseball, by the way.
But you learn what it means and what it takes, right? And you developed your, what I call value or muscle, which is, okay, let me see what happens when I really dedicate my time to this. And saying, it's not that, right? What did you lose time doing? Or what do you lose time doing right now in your life? Where I can't believe there's 2 hours have gone by.
Yeah, I'd say the two major things are writing. Writing is my go-to, just completely get lost. And then conversations about ideas, about philosophy, about psychology, about business and marketing. That's the stuff that 10 hours could go by and I'm still not tired.
And what do you usually write about? Those ideas. So it's subject matter and the activity. Who's your most inspiring hero?
Ayn Rand is at the top of my list. Steve Jobs is at the top of my list, despite my implied criticism at the beginning of this show. Those are probably the two that are most coming to mind right now.
Okay. What is the most moving piece of art was ever exposed to?
Oh my gosh, so many. I mentioned Ayn Rand, but I'll name different piece of art that's meaningful to me, which is Les Miserables by Hugo. Just the feeling like you're in the hands of a powerful storyteller.
Yes. We're starting to see something emerge out of, if we see the intersectionality of all of those things. And I can go on and ask you things about the places you love to be and so on. I call this exercise value warm-up. And usually people do what you just did, which is smile. You smile when you say those things because we are reconnecting to this powerful thing called our values. And the model I usually follow is the model of let's warm up this value or muscle because we're born with it and reconnect to it. So we do this reignition of the value or muscle, but then we go a little deeper and I'll ask you to do, and I don't know if you want to do it now or not, but some kind of an inventory. Okay, so let me ask you, and you just answered some of it. What is the work and creative activities you love doing most? It could be one thing. And the next thing is, what are your favorite hobbies or experiences outside of creative work that you love doing? One or two things, right?
I love writing, like creating a piece of content that I think is really persuasive and powerful. And that can be marketing content where I'm trying to move an audience towards a particular goal. It can be intellectual content where I'm trying to convince them of a certain idea. I love strategy. I love what are the activities that we could do to achieve some goal. I love speaking, being in front of an audience, and the whole category of leadership, helping inspire and drive people to get better results. I've done coaching in the past, and I really love that activity of helping somebody reach their apex. I want them to be as passionate about their work as I am. So those are some of the major creative things that light me up. And hobbies is funny. I don't have many hobbies. I'm so focused on this core activities.
You love baseball. Come on.
That's what I was going to mention. And baseball, I chose deliberately because I used to do piano, before that guitar, and those I loved, but they were demanding, right? If you don't show up and practice piano every day when you're learning, you're going to regress. And that meant taking time away from my most important stuff in work. I deliberately reawakened a childhood passion for baseball because baseball's there whenever I want it, but all it demands of me is fandom, not skill development.
Yeah, but what about baseball is interesting?
Part of it is just that connection to childhood, is that just the feeling of throwing a ball and hitting it, I really loved. I love that, in my opinion, it's like reading a novel in that you have these dramatic storylines with these dramatic moments, but the thing that makes it superior to a novel is you get to go to a ballpark, which are aesthetically the most joyful, beautiful places on earth. And it's a novel where you really don't know how it's going to end. With a novel, you can generally suss out, the good guy's probably going to win in this one, or this is a tragedy, but you never know how a ball game is going to end.
Tell me, what is your most cherished possession?
Oh, my most cherished possession it's up behind me on my bookshelf right there. It's a framed letter from, it was Ayn Rand's top student, Leonard Peikoff, who's somebody I learned a lot from when I was 15 years old and first discovered Ayn Rand. I wrote him a letter and basically saying, I want to be involved in promoting these ideas. And I got a letter back from somebody else who said, well, Leonard's really busy. He doesn't have time to answer many letters. But then Leonard did write me back and saying, this is such an impressive letter for a 15-year-old. I thought you deserved a few words from me. And that, the meaning of hearing from your hero at that age. And then I ultimately got to meet him. And in his letter, he had said, come up and introduce yourself. Say you were the 15-year-old who wrote me in English. So I didn't meet him till I was 21, but I said, I'm the 21-year-old who was the 15-year-old who wrote you in English. And I told him the story and he got a kick out of it. So that, to me, it summarizes what I've done with my life. And it was just very pivotal.
So as you were saying those things, I built the next step, which is I built your value galaxy. And let me play back. So we do an inventory of all the things. And I would ask you about the knowledge and skills you are most proud of honing, the places you love being, because we want to learn about how you relax as well, not just how you work, and the people you love and so on. And you just told us about someone who actually manifests your value, what I call your value themes, the writer of philosophy. It's clear to me that all the values you just mentioned, and you mentioned the baseball and the writing and the coaching and the speaking and thinking strategically and marketing and so on. But what I can see already forming are what I call the value themes. I see 3 value themes. 1, you love abstract ideas. You love thinking big picture. I guess you're the guy who gets lost in details, right? You need someone next to you that organizes things around you, right? Why do I know that? Because it's clear you love strategy. You also love philosophy. Both of them are big picture, big questions. The other thing, you love communication, and that's your connection to people. You love coaching them. You love writing for them, and you like to see how it impacts your reader. You are the person who's like, I don't want to write for no one. I'm writing for myself. I want to see it impacting the people. You like speaking in front of people. So communication. And the other one is, again, what I see in baseball is, again, the connection. You're walking into a place with a lot of people and there are stories. You see, even the baseball, I can reconnect. So I would say communication, people, and abstract ideas. I'm starting to see as what I call the value themes. What I talk to people about when I ask, who's Don? The best way you can answer that question is, I'm the person that loves abstract ideas, philosophical ideas, likes to write and engage people with them through communication, which is writing, speaking, coaching, teaching. And I love to engage with people. If you ask what do I do to relax, let's have a conversation about something important. I already know you by the power of you expressing what you're attracted to. And from that, we built something we call the value galaxy of all the things. And I usually ask people to put sticky notes on a wall and try to combine them together and try to figure out what is the one in the many of all those. What's interesting is always consolidates itself to about 4 to 7 themes. And then this is who you are. This is who you are in different aspect of who you are. And then the next thing is to take it deeper into, okay, what do I do with those things? And I create categories for those values because they demand, in a way, different types of energy and focus from you, which is your limited resource. And so work and career values, and then you got relationships with people, different types of relationships, and then the hobbies and the relaxation and recreation. And then there's another aspect. This is why this podcast is called The Unhappy Millionaire, has to do with money and the whole relationship with money. What are the values that actually create you the money that you need? And we separate it out and we disconnect it from the other three because that's where we get wrong. We think that money needs to drive anything. No, money is really important and you need things to make you money, but you separate them out. This is the process because for me, the nature of this problem is the intersection of you and the world. And you need to learn about both. So my 21-year-old have so much fun talking to these days every day. She's trying to find and forge her way. Is really exposing yourself to the world. As a 20-year-old, let's say if I take my daughter, the process I would like to see for her is first expose yourself, throw yourself to the world. See what's out there. Learn the size of the buffet in front of you and what it has to offer you. And then from there, you seek meaning. What are those things that give you meaning? From that, you go and you focus on the things that you find meaning in, and then you dive into them to learn and get knowledge and expertise from people. And that allows you to develop some vision. And if you take a Steve Jobs, that's what he did. He wandered around, traveled to India, dropped out of school, walked barefoot, going to a calligraphy classroom. Just a lot of exposure and exploration trying to find. And then you say, that's interesting. Okay, so he dove in, got the knowledge, and then you go for experience. You actually go to work. You do things. From that, you develop from meaning to vision to mission, which is, okay, that's what I want to do. And then going even deeper, you create opportunities or identify opportunities, and that's how you get to work. So on the world side, it's exposure, it's knowledge and expertise, and then the opportunities. On what's happening on your side, it's finding meaning, developing a vision, developing for that a mission, and from there, finding the actual work. So it's a process that slowly focuses on something that you can find. And across this whole journey, you need to stay true to you. And that's what people find challenging, because if you're driven by meaning, then you won't have to work a day in your life, which is actually how I feel about my work now.
I'm Don Watkins, he's Tal Safani, and this has been The Unhappy Millionaire. Ready to take the next step in your journey? Visit theunhappymillionaire.com, where you can find powerful resources for building a life that you love and details on how you can work with Tal and me.